All right, thank you for joining us. Today I'm joined by Emma Tiedemann, and she is the Director of Broadcasting for the Sea Dogs. A very impressive resume. Um, really appreciate you joining us today, and especially with the craziness of a season, being able to talk to someone in your position, being able to talk to you today. That's pretty cool. So, really, thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Emma real quick, as you could probably do your background a little bit better than I could, but for those maybe unfamiliar with you or your position, could you just explain kind of your background leading up to where you are now and what you're doing nowadays?
Absolutely. I'm the play-by-play voice for the Sea Dogs, and I got started doing play-by-play when I was 15 years old. I got started a little bit earlier than most people, but I absolutely fell in love with it after my first game. It was Division 3 women's basketball game, and I knew that I wanted to do that. And so from there, I continued broadcasting, whether it was basketball, soccer, volleyball, baseball, softball, anything that they would let me call. Um, Through high school, and then I went to the University of Missouri and continued to do play-by-play there for the student radio station. I branched out to football and called the Cotton Bowl in 2014 for them. And then it was around that time that I realized that baseball was my weakest sport play-by-play wise, and I wanted to either work for a university or a network, and so needed to kind of increase that side of the reel a little bit. So I ended up going to Palmer, Alaska for a summer in the summer of 2014 and called baseball just every single day. And that's actually one of the things that drew me to wanting to pursue a career in baseball over other sports right now, is because you get to go to the ballpark every day and you get to work every day. And that's not like other sports. You have, football once a week, basketball twice a week. So from Alaska, I spent 2 seasons in Medford, Oregon, in Southern Oregon with a summer collegiate team. And then I broke into professional baseball with the St. Paul Saints. They're now a AAA affiliate of the Twins, but at that time, they were an independent team. And then I spent the last 2 seasons, well, that were played in 18 and 19, with the Lexington Legends. They were the single A affiliate of the Kansas City Royals. And then that brings us to Portland. I moved to Portland in March of 2020, was here for over a year before I actually got to call my first baseball game because of the pandemic. So it's a long-winded background, but there it is.
Well, it's a worthy long-winded one because you've been everywhere, done a lot of things, and hearing the variety of sports you've been able to cover, that's pretty cool too, especially for people coming up into the industry. Being able to get a wide variety of sports under your belt, at least to an extent, is valuable and important. So it's pretty cool to hear it from a professional standpoint. But you touch on something at the end that actually transitions pretty well into the next question. You joined the Sea Dogs in 2020, but that wasn't exactly normal circumstances. And it's been talked about a lot, but just for the sake of this interview, let's talk about it a little bit more. What was that first season like? I mean, obviously there wasn't a season, but entering the position and then going into that role and having it all kind of fall out from the floor, what was that like in your position?
It was really difficult. I had personally only been to Portland one time about a month before they flew me up here for the final round of interviews and to offer me the job. So I had never really been to Maine. So I was just freshly up here. I was driving up from Kentucky, so excited. And then, I was listening to the radio and the NBA gets shut down. And then, different things like that start getting shut down. But in my mind, I was like, "Ah, it's fine. Baseball's outdoors. It's not going to be that bad. I have to get to Maine." And I get up here in my first day of work, walk in, and we had a meeting at 8:30, and we were all sent home to work from home for what we thought was 2 weeks, but it turned out to be 3 months. So it was just having to, kind of get out of my comfort zone a little bit and learn to meet my coworkers via Zoom. And whenever you're starting any job, it's tough whenever you can't be truly hands-on and actually in the workplace and interacting with people and, just popping into someone's office to ask a question rather than being nervous sending an email like, oh, what's this password again? Not wanting to be that person nagging on the emails. But it was really difficult, but at the same time, it really allowed me to get to know the state of Maine. I went camping a ton. I went hiking with my dog a
Mhm.
ton. And then once we were in the office, it, allowed me to get to know my coworkers a little bit better too, just because we were all here. I wasn't going on the road with the team because we didn't have a season. So overall, it all worked out. And we have baseball now, but it was pretty tough, to be honest, back in 2020.
Hiking in Maine is always a good replacement, though. If you can't do the other, hiking in Maine is never a bad thing. But especially transitioning into a new role. I mean, coming into this, driving up to Maine for the first time, that transition into the new role must have been just kind of overwhelming a little bit, especially not being able to. Obviously, you're a professional, so you're very talented at what you do. But anytime you do something new for the first time, in this case, coming to Maine and experiencing a new role, that initial experience seemed important. But it's good to hear how kind of the way that we mediate online can kind of accommodate for that in some sense. But with that and how last year went, what changes have been employed on your end and changes to your role coming into the new season, actually being able to finally do the thing that you love to do?
So a lot. I mean, it all centers around COVID restrictions. So even though we finally get to call baseball, I still haven't seen a normal Sea Dogs game or seen a normal game day operation. On for game days, I typically will be running down to the clubhouse, grabbing lineups, talking to the managers, making sure my game notes are distributed, stat packs, rosters, handling any roster moves that might happen that day. But this year, it's all via text or phone call with the manager. So, I'll receive a text some point in the late morning from our manager. I'll send it to the opposing team's broadcaster. That broadcaster will send me their lineup. It's just very different. And then, for post game interviews and stuff like that, the reporters would usually, go talk to the manager themselves in the clubhouse or on the field, but we can't do that. So on my post game show, I'll be sending out a Zoom link to the reporters and to our manager, while also sending out the box score that is usually hand delivered out there. Trying to wrap up my post game show, trying to make sure everyone's in the right spots for Zoom. It's crazy, and there's really only a couple of us up here that are kind of running that show. So I know it's a lot different than at press boxes I've been a part of, but it's mostly just COVID restrictions and just keeping everyone safe, making sure that we still have a season this year.
And is that something it's in place for the majority of the season, probably the whole season, or are those things that are starting to kind of develop more towards normalcy as the world develops more towards normalcy, or are those things that are in place for this whole season?
Um, I can foresee them staying in place for the whole season. We have seen some restrictions lifted when it comes to on-field promotions and like national anthem singers and that kind of stuff. We can have people actually on the field, which when we started the year, we had to have a buffer zone around the field. We couldn't even get close to it and close to the players. So I think that it's encouraging that those things are lifting a lot earlier than even we expected. But I think whenever it comes to having outsiders, but
Right.
staff or reporters go into a clubhouse, into an enclosed environment, I think those restrictions will be there for a while.
Mm.
So I think from our standpoint, we're just preparing for this to be the whole season because, our staff knows how to run a normal game day, even though I still don't know what that looks like. But, I've done it in other teams. So we all know what normalcy looks like. So we're ready for that when that happens. But we're still just making sure that we can do the best jobs we can, 50 feet away from the people that we're talking to via Zoom.
Right, absolutely. One last question on this whole subject, and then we can move off of it because it's been talked about way too much. But having missed out on last season, how did you make sure that your skills and the way you approached a game stayed up to date? Were you able to get any games in outside of the Sea Dogs, or were you able to practice in any ways? How did you make sure that your skills stayed sharp?
Well, I got lucky. When I was living in Kentucky, I was also the voice of Morehead State women's basketball. So after the 2019 season, I did call a full season of women's basketball. So it wasn't like I had gone a full year and a half without calling any sort of sports. But then once we got closer, I would watch old games. I would call them out loud to my dog. I started playing. My fiance and I went long distance because he had to stay in Kentucky. So I started playing this like Warzone game, and I would do like the
Mm.
comms. And so, that's sort of play by play. So obviously I died a lot. So I would just be like talking about what everyone else is doing. So different things like that. I tried to get my voice back up to um, kind of making sure that I can talk for 3 hours a night. It's still not up to par. My voice is still exhausted after every game, but Um, yeah, I did what I could, but I didn't think I did terrible on opening night, but there's definitely, there was some rust that first night, and there still is. So it'll take some reps to get back where I was.
Understandably so, but it's cool to hear that you had to do it in some unconventional but very true ways and very realistic. But let's get off that fun subject and let's talk more about you. I mean, how does it feel to be a leading female in the industry and serve as a potential role model for young women or just women trying to break into the industry and rise up through the ranks? How does it feel to serve that role?
It's kind of surreal because I've never thought that I would be in that type of position, or never. I always viewed myself as a broadcaster that happens to be a female and that happens to have that storyline follow me wherever I go. So once I kind of have come to accept that I can play that role for younger girls, and I mean even women in college that are maybe finding out that they like play by play. It's just really cool to know that I can hopefully be someone that they see and say, oh, this is a career path for me, or this is an option for me to pursue, and that other females have done it, so I can do it too. It's a huge honor, and it's really exciting to see how many other women are coming up the ranks, and will hopefully join me and the other four women in minor league baseball here pretty soon.
Well, your skills and accolades speak for themselves. I mean, you've got a lot of ground to stand on. You're a very talented broadcaster, period. But just being able to serve as a role model is awesome, and I think you do a great job of that. But kind of on that same note, what advice would you give, not to just females, but just in general? What advice would you give to young up and coming broadcasters or people that are trying to make a transition or think they want to get into the field?
Just do it. I mean, there's going to be naysayers and so-called haters along the way, but I mean, if you have a passion for something and you don't even really have to have the talent exactly for it, as long as you have the will to get better at it. I just say keep doing it, and then just be yourself. That's one thing that it took me quite a while to kind of be comfortable in my own skin and comfortable with my own personality and sense of humor on in the booth, and then just also just in general in the front office. It's just people enjoy hearing personalities on the radio. They don't just want to hear, oh, strike two. Make a joke, make some fun out of it. So just be yourself on the air, and then if that's something that you want to pursue it, and then you just got to work your butt off to do it, but in the end it's all worth it.
That it is. It's an incredibly fun uh, job, if you even want to call it that, because it's mostly just a fun day. Especially, hopefully, as normalcy we gear back towards that. Hopefully, you get back into the ballpark and you get to have a quote unquote normal day at the office. But just really want to thank you for sitting down with us and spending some time and being able to do this interview. It's awesome to be able to talk to professionals in the field and someone like you with your accolades and the interesting path you've had coming to the Sea Dogs and even before that. So really just want to thank Emma and appreciate you and look forward to hearing you on the radio and then for normalcy, maybe having you back in the ballpark. But thank you very much for joining us today.
Absolutely.